by example, or maybe I'm not a good boss and at least be, you know, thinking at least that he's good. I don't know. Guess we shall see. Okay, so we are at the point of, I'd finished talking about, just going to review for us here. I was, okay, so we were kind of talking about, there we go. Close the factory for Valentine's Day. Like lots of tips or really busy? Oh. Man, I thought of you two. I thought of you two on Sunday because I gave someone a 40% tip. Well, here's my philosophy. Tell me if you think I'm flawed here. But the person, this was a Gyu, how do you say Gyu Raku? Yeah, the one in Kapiolani. And I think we've gotten the cheese wonton and something else as like a big set of things. And then he forgot to put it on the bill. We told him, he's like, don't worry about it. So I gave the equivalent amount that I would have paid for it and added that on to the traditional tip. So I'm not sure if it really counts as me actually issuing a 40% tip or just karmic justice, just trying to right the world. I don't know, what do you experience on the other end? What typically happens when you miss, give someone too much stuff? What happens? I gave the equivalent. Maybe I shouldn't have, but I did. Yeah, it's trying to be nice. It's trying to share the wealth.
Since he's essentially entering the cost that good himself.
Oh my God, why is this thing still spinning? Oh my God, is there a ghost in this class right now? I really don't want to have to fight with this.
In essence, he literally just made money.
Yeah, exactly. And more power to him, you know, more power to him. You know, he had a shitty job and Sunday. That wasn't even like, okay, so this is where we were kind of at. We were talking about, we had this discussion about productivity, just to kind of review where we were. We were talking about productivity. We were talking about Malthus and this prediction that we were all going to basically starve ourselves because there were too many people. And the idea was, why are individuals that are kind of like doomsday predictors and say all things are going to end? Why it's actually not that bad? The whole reason for that, the reason how it gets resolved is this idea of the was this idea of this idea. Wow. It's fine. You know what? Because this is a perfect example of a laborer working with a capital device, and it's making me more productive. It's saying that I'm spending too long talking about things. Who knows? Well, yeah, it could be. You're right. I don't even know. How would I even know? Oh, well, here. You know what I'll do? I will circumvent it and say, screw you, computer. There's this one, but you think this thing is going crazy, you think? Here, let's do this. They turned it off. Okay, let's see. How to use the clicker? You know, the clicker is okay. But what? See, it's still moving.
Or is that by itself? Or
No, I was not moving it. So
the mouse moves?
this is me moving. Yeah, that's what I was trying to think about. Is it a time? Let's make it less grumpy. Let's see if it still gets grumpy. So this was the idea. The idea was with better technology, the production function shifts up. But the whole kind of closing comment I made last week was eventually, though, you do have diminishing marginal returns to labor. That was kind of the closing part of that discussion. Now, so here's what we want to lead up to now. Now with that idea of production. If you remember back 2, 3, 4 weeks back, we had to try to understand how consumers make choices. If you remember, it was a 3-step process. It was difference curves, budget constraints, and the third step was finding that sort of optimal. 3 steps. And a difference curve that right, an indifference curve that looked like this, where we had 2 products, quantity of X, quantity of Y, and then we added to it a budget constraint, and then there was a point of optimality, right? That was kind of our way of finding how consumers choose between consuming goods X and good Y. Basically, microeconomists, so this is all coming about in the 1880s, 1890s, the neoclassical economics. Basically, what we do as economists, microeconomists, is instead of it being goods X and good Y, we have labor and capital. And if the firm is basically saying there is a certain level of production, an isoquant, there's a certain budget that I have to fulfill, right? A budget that I have for labor and capital as a whole. That's my budget constraint. And there's going to be some solution, some amount of labor and capital combination that is my way to maximize production subject to my budget constraints or my ISO cost. What was it for the consumer? What was I maximizing there? What was I maximizing? Exactly, utility. Highest indifference curve subject to the budget constraint. Now, as a firm, I just want to produce the most. I want to get the highest ISO quant, highest level of production subject to that budget constraint, ISO cost. So to motivate that. So if you want to add this to your notes, isoquants are like indifference curves. It's the firm equivalent of the indifference curve. And the idea here is you can imagine all these different quantities of labor and capital that we have some commonalities here. Now, take note of this. There is no labor of 0, capital of 0. That's pretty important because here we're essentially saying that each input on some level is essential. But it can't be fully automated. It can't be fully human workers. But outside of that, you can have something be highly automated, highly labor intensive, right? And then you have some combination of the two. But as you can see here with the circle, right, we have 4 possible combinations of labor and capital that produce the same level of output, 75. So that would be a pretty good indication then of what is the definition of the isoquant. Remember, the similar understanding of this would be able to have the xylophones and yo-yos and them delivering different levels of utility into the different combinations of those 2 goods that produce the same level. So here's our isoquant. The isoquant then, as we start to draw it out, is going to be here. So for each of these levels of output, we have an isoquant. Now, the firm obviously earns revenue on what it produces. So it's obviously going to want to maximize its goal is get the ISO point furthest from the order, just like the consumer has the goal of furthest price indifference from the order. Okay, so what's kind of significant about this though is that we also get a little bit of evidence of diminishing returns to each input. And the way that you see that, and this is how you see this here, is that for the same level of capital units, one additional worker delivers to me 20 units of additional output. Adding another worker, the third worker, now only gets me a gain of 15 units. So drawing horizontal lines, I can actually see that there's diminishing returns here. You can see the diminishing returns to workers, to laborers, with this line here. Because again, I can see 20, an increase of 20, increase of 15. This one would obviously be something less than 15. The next one, you can do it with vertical lines as well, right? Vertical lines. So to go from 1 unit, sorry, if I had more lines here, you could actually see the diminishing returns to capital involved. Both inputs have diminishing returns. They have to, they must, as long as you keep the other input the same. But that flexibility is the challenge. This is the manager's challenge from the perspective of an economist. Right? Why? There's no reason, there really is no reason to think that just because you're a bigger store, you need to have automated checkout. Just because you're a smaller store, everything is to be done by. There's really no reason to suggest that. Same with the other side, right? Just because you're a big store, you don't have to do everything computerized and automated. That's not necessarily the case. Size is not dictating this. What's dictating this is two things. Well, three things. The two things, the first two things would be the productivity of each input, and the third thing would be the cost of those inputs. So, if you've ever been to IKEA, IKEA on the mainland, right? It's this big, huge store. And it's all this furniture. And I don't know, I haven't bought furniture since I just got married, when I got married. I got married in 2012. And I've outgrown most of my furniture. The furniture I have is all from IKEA. So the idea with IKEA is you don't want to spend like $800 for a dresser. So you get this dresser that you have to make yourself from components. So you are doing all the work, but the product itself was put together in Eastern Europe. So Eastern Europeans, like Romanians, Bulgarians, something like that, were the ones that were actually packing the box with all the bolts and the boards and everything like that. The capital would be, right, someone had to come up with the design for the dresser, someone had to create a distribution system to sell this dresser. But why is it cheaper? Well, it's cheaper because there's less labor involved, right? I mean, the less labor involved, obviously it should be cheaper. But then IKEA isn't just saving money on the fact that they can sell me furniture at a cheaper cost. They're saving money by producing the goods in really cheap countries. That's the whole point of the EU, right? The European Union, EU, the reason why it's such a powerful force is because the work is being done in Turkey. Oh, no. The work is being done in Turkey. Computers. Let's see here. How can we circumvent this computer and make it think I'm something different? Let's see how smart I am. No, it's not. Wait, maybe. Oh, it's Pocket. Let's see if it still does it here. Okay, someone tell me if it does it on this one too. We'll see if I was smarter than that. But the idea is that IKEA makes money on the fact that it does produce goods in the European Union, but it picks the cheaper countries to make it in. So it's going to pick a Turkey, it's going to pick a Ukraine or Romania, Czech Republic. It's going to pick really cheap countries. It's not going to make it in France, in Germany, in England, or high cost, labor cost countries. Now, there's certain things where there is no flexibility, right? So the food service industry is a perfect example, right? Because, dude, you got to have waiters and waitresses. You have to have cooks. You can automate some things, and you can say, I need fewer waiters and waitresses if, for instance, I make people bust their own table, right? Like, well, like on the mainland, like Chipotle, where you have to bust your own table, right? Or I could tell people, I'm only going to come to your table once. I'm over. You can come up with some ways to save on labor costs, but for the most part, there's not much you can do. Now, some would even say, like, just as I was talking about with Brent and even with Jacob about like online education, right? 20 years ago, 30 years ago, you would have thought of even my profession as being immune to this substitution, because you would say, dude, you need a professor to teach a class, the professor has to be here. Well, it clearly is not the case, right? There's probably, even the online classes you're taking, you could be taking it with someone that doesn't even live in Hawaii, right? UH hires whoever they sucker into teaching the class for the price they want, or they don't have to be in Hawaii. Is that really, I think if some of you, I mean, I think that's the regulations is it can be anyone. Really? So what does that person do? Do they just impose their time zone, or do they give you other? But the person may be guilty of the third order. At least you're so right, so now, dude, that's my competitor, right? This Oregonian, right, is my competitor, which sucks, right? I mean, it's great for UH because it's placing that downward pressure on compensation I have to, because now I have to compete with Mr. Oregonian, right? Now, there's other things that could be said, right? Maybe I'm more productive because I'm working on Hawaiian time than Oregonian time. Maybe I'm more productive because I have an office in the desert, et cetera, et cetera. But no, the key thing I want to conclude this slide with is no industry is immune to this. No industry is immune to this. So we even think of like public education on the K-12, right? They're getting decimated, especially in the mainland, by charter schools, right? And by virtual charter schools, right? And virtual charter schools means that you go, maybe you see a teacher once a week or once a month or once a semester, I don't know what it is, but your teacher doesn't even necessarily have to be in the state necessarily. It's all done mediated online. It could work great for some, right? Like if I'm like a creationist and I don't want to have to go to school with non-creationists and I want to create my own curriculum around my creationist philosophy, right? We live in the United States, more power to you, right? But at the same time, right, we might have some questions about what is the value of everything else you're getting, right? I mean, some people are really good at teaching themselves, as we know some people really do well online, and others not so much, right? And I would put it together with this again, even think of the Uber driver, right? That's the whole thing against like Uber drivers and autonomous vehicles and all of those things. Truck drivers, right? Truck drivers are the next ones to have to worry about their things. About what? Well, I mean, if you're a truck driver, you're worried about two things: automated trucks, but you're also worried about Mexican truck drivers. So that's the whole thing, right? National borders then create can artificially boost someone's compensation. So think about it, right? Think of even my status as a U.S. citizen means that I can command a higher wage than someone who's even visa has to get sponsored, right? Or someone who isn't even a legal citizen, let's say, you have to pay them, right? I mean, before you scoff at that and say you could never have, right? It absolutely happens everywhere. I'm sure it is happening somewhere in some ways. Right, and so as we talk about, why does everyone get always like up in arms about illegal immigration? Well, some of the times, right, it's exactly these kinds of things of what's the compensation going to be for the worker. And if a firm can't substitute, right, the Kristen and Levi's as the waiter waitress, maybe I can get Levi's immigrant, right, frenemy, right, and that works under the table for cash. And now I have still using laborers, but I'm paying that person less, right? That's kind of the goal, right? If I'm the firm. Because not only do I want to get the maximum production, but I want the lowest ISO cost one. AI, right, or autonomous vehicles, is a way of moving it more to capital than labor. But think about what does immigration debates that we're having, what is that all about? That's about changing the ISO cost curve and manipulating it to get a lower cost. So you can see here then the production that I'm making, what's true along this is that there are two things that are contributing to labor. Or to output, the laborers and the capital. So this MP then stands for marginal productivity. Marginal productivity being, now my marginal productivity of labor would be the change in my total output over my change in my quantity of workers. How productive is each worker? And most of the time, the easiest way to do this for economists is change the number of workers by one. Because if you make the denominator 1, right, then you can see exactly what that next additional worker is contributing. Again, it goes back to just I had the discussion of this class. But again, right, like if I'm trying to get another economist, I have to find some way to justify how many extra students. That's obviously got to be part of it. Same thing for capital, right? So if I want to get a new computer, I have to somehow justify that I'm going to do more productive worker with that extra computer or with that extra. This stupid owl. It's actually a really smart owl. But right, I mean, I had to make some sort of justification that instead of me having to go to that really expensive, actually, so this class would have been taught in the other, you know, that room in the library, the one where goes to the islands. You know, it's a really expensive room because really expensive equipment, and there's a person that's behind the thing, like, you know, mixing, matching, and right, doing all this stuff, editing, all that stuff. But the problem is, we're kind of a small class, and there weren't a lot of people on the neighbor island. So the idea was get Shady his own owl, and then we don't have to have this person sitting behind the phone making a video. Right? I mean, a classic way of trying to make this kind of thing, because the idea was, well, now that thing is like $800. We have to find some sort of justification for spending $800 just for shining. But it means that more people can take this class, right? Not necessarily now, although there's one person, right, the person using the state pledge for this semester, none of you have ever seen her in this class because she only has to watch the video, right? So, I mean, so in her case, right, she wouldn't be able to teach this class if she wouldn't do it, and she's a state legislator. Unsolved, right? So, probably, Stacy Lynn Eli. So that would be Wine-Eye, Cooley, Miley. So, district
tell you what it is.
Your state house district. Anyway, so she's got obviously very important job to do it, right? And that's just limited to one student per semester. But the idea, the way that I got that device was I could say this class could be taught in the summer, this class could be taught at other times, and people need to take it, and it doesn't necessarily have to be taught in person. Now, what that means is that each time I'm producing something with more workers, that would be less capital, and vice versa. More capital, less workers, right? So that's the trade-off. And the trade-off is changing. So that's what we're seeing here. So if you remember back to the indifference curve, the slope of the indifference curve was the marginal rate of substitution. The marginal rate of substitution was the marginal utility of the good on the x-axis over the marginal utility of the good on the y-axis. This is the MRT, the MRX. So I'm drawing all these similarities because basically you only have to know how to do one of the ways, right? And then you see corporate or business production. So instead of a marginal rate of substitution as a slope, like we have in the indifference curve, now we have the marginal rate of technical substitution as the slope of our isoquants. And it's just like a marginal rate of substitution. As I use more workers, the workers become less and less productive. And vice versa. And you see that because it's going from steeper to flatter. This slope here is that if labor is on the x-axis, and I will always do that in this class, but if you want to prepare yourself for the real world, likely situation, you're talking to another economist who does it differently, it's the marginal productivity of the input on the x-axis over the marginal productivity of the input on the y. Typically, economists do almost always put labor on the x-axis. There's no requirement, but typically, there's no rule, there's no regulation that makes us put labor on the x-axis, but typically it's that way. But it's the marginal productivity of the input on the x-axis over the marginal productivity of the input on the y-axis. So in this case, it's negative, sorry, it's negative, but it's generally going to be the marginal productivity of labor over the marginal productivity of capital. As you go from left to right, it gets flatter and flatter. As you go from right to left, it gets steeper and steeper. It's obviously changing. It's changing because of the unique way that these two inputs exist. I'll repeat that again. It's not constant. This slope, marginal rate of technical substitution, is not constant because of the unique relationship between labor and capital. But the relationship here between labor and capital is that they are not perfect substitutes, meaning a worker, like a robot, is not the same as a person. They can't produce the same amount of stuff. And vice versa. That, let's say a car driving itself is not the same as a human driving a car. All things that I think we readily accept, but that's generally the relationship between labor and capital. Is that very, very, very few instances where, for instance, this would be a straight line. So if you think back to the consumer, remember, oranges and apples might be a straight line if you're just looking for a citrus, right? Or just looking for a fruit in general. Right? Apples and oranges might be a straight line, or even oranges and tangerines, right? They're basically the same. So if oranges and tangerines are basically the same, that slope was constant at each and every point. And if you thought that a robot security guard was just like a regular security guard, then you would say straight line. But again, very, very, very few instances of where that actually occurs. Most of the time, they are imperfectly substituting each other, as is the case here. Now, there's another kind of technology that can exist, another kind of relationship that can exist between these. And that's one like, how many workers does it take to fly a plane? Yeah, right. So you got a pilot, a co-pilot, and then let's say like 2 flight stewards, flight attendants, right? Basically, it takes 4 workers and 1 plane, right? And if it's a really long plane flight, then it takes like 2 pilots, 2 co-pilots, or like 4, and then maybe I don't know, an extra 4, right? But there's basically a specific combination between the 2, right? 1 teacher, 1 professor, 1 class. Sometimes you get 2, right? But you generally get at least 1, and you don't generally go beyond 2, right? So there's basically a specific combination that most of the time it's 1 and 1. So that's going to be very different. Just like we talked about the fact that whenever I have bought shoes, they come with shoelaces, or whenever I bought black shoes, they come with white shoes. It's also the case that production, in this case, look like this. This is what we would call the anti-F technology. The anti-F technology is what we would call, for consumers, perfect complement. Basically, it just says, dude, you've got your quantity of your capital goods, in this case, planes. You need 1 airplane and 4 workers to get a plane going, right? To offer 1 flight. Now you can do something different, right? Like I love being in a union. I've got no complaints about being in a union, except one. And the one complaint I have about a union would be that sometimes I feel like the output is being written to require more employees than is actually. Right? So that's like my whole rule of, right, why is it that a flight that takes 4 hours and 59 minutes has like a relief crew, right? So there's 2 pilots, 2 or doesn't have a relief crew. And the one that's 5 hours and 1 minute has the relief crew, right? It could be a federal law, but it also could be a union regulation. And when management complains about it, they're not necessarily being anti-work, although they kind of are. I mean, their argument, though, might have some realization that, dude, do we really need that many extra workers to do the job, right? Or I think it's the rule that, right? So my son, who's in preschool, the state regulations for preschools is that they require 2 teachers to teach 20 students, but then he'll go to kindergarten, and the same state regulation has 1 teacher for like 25 students. All right? I mean, how do I make sense of how did that dynamic change so much? Yeah, little kids are needy, but I'm not sure there's that much. So there can be some debate about how many workers it takes to do certain things. But in this kind of technology, there are specific combinations. Now, maybe it knows if I'm getting close to it. It's weird. It didn't do it until I got. Yeah.
You gotta go back. It's gonna change.
Oh! Shit. Oh, wow, that's cool.
How are you doing that?
I have no idea.
In the center there.
Wait, I'm trying to see if I go backwards, does it go back? No, it doesn't. See, oh. That is, okay, so what happens?
That'd be like.
Yeah, but how? Maybe it's that little bear. That bear does not look nice, right? What is that little bear doing? That's the Korean keyboard. I don't need a.
All you gotta do is just, when you're lecturing, when you're ready to change slides, just walk across, and then change slides, and then walk back, keep talking.
Everyone who wasn't in this class, come back and say, okay.
Okay, see, I'm gonna sit over here. I'll sit right here, and then it will. Maybe it will not move. Yeah, like a poor man's laser pointer. Let's see. Wait. So this. Let's see if this thing actually. I don't think this thing works so either. You know what I should do? I should give one of you this device so that you could like wreak havoc on all your other professors. That you could be like sitting in the back and like, oh look at this! It's got a laser. Pew 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 pew. Sorry, too much Star Wars. Yeah, exactly. See, see. No. Right. I mean, that's going to be something that the Empire has to deal with, right? Think about it, right? General Tarkov, right? The guy, he's got all these stormtroopers, right? But think back to Episode 1, right? When it was all those like, what were those robots called? Those ones, remember the ones? They were the
droid army.
Yeah, so the droid army, right? That was the problem, right? And then they kind of think about it, then they need to get like something better, like Boba Fett, right? Making all the other clones and. Exactly, yeah. Now, if you think that any of this is really crazy. No, this is great. I want to even, you know what? Okay, I want to show this to you. I want there to be surprise. Oh, yeah. Oh, my God. That was a great class. You remember that? Yeah, you guys are both. Yeah. Oh, my God. Yeah, they had just gotten off of the Navy, right? Or the Coast Guard or something. So they were like fresh out of service. And they were like, yeah, I forgot about that. And they did. And they did. Exactly. So look at this. Some econ professor wrote about the economic catastrophe of the Death Star being destroyed. Like, think about that. I mean, that's a huge... So the estimate is that it cost the empire $193 quintillion. Well, it's going to draw it down, right? So to the extent that I can get pretty darn close. So, right, so there is no, so think about it. If I use a self-checkout, I mean, what's to stop me from, like, putting an extra thing, you know, like not scanning everything that I bought, right? Just honesty and karmic justice, right? Those are really, and maybe the security guard, but that's a big maybe, right? I mean, so scanners aren't that smart, right? Like, so, but they can get pretty close, right? Because what if they can do weighing and all the other things? Once it happened, no, I didn't do it intentionally, but my son put on the bottom part of the stroller candy that he thought he was giving to me, and I said was okay to buy, but he thought he didn't need to hand it to me. They could just put it on the bottom. And I was already way out of the store. And the idea of the embarrassment of going back and doing it, it's like, I'm sure they screwed me over some other ways. That's what I tell myself. You know, like, I didn't go back, but it was only because I was, like, well out of the store. And it just, you would think it wouldn't embarrass me, but I was embarrassed enough that I was like, what if they, like, you know, get real, what if there's just a manager hungry for power? He's like, I'm going to get shiting. And I was like, it's 99 cents. Like, they probably fucked me some other way. So it probably, right? I mean, oh, that's right. Because Amazon ones, they have no people, right? I mean, yeah, and they have no cashiers. No, so this one, look at the great paper title too. Yeah, someone wrote it. An academic wrote it. If my memory serves me right, yeah. I mean, it's from WashU, so it's a really great university. It's a trap, Emperor Palpatine's poison pill. And it basically looks at what was the financial crisis caused by the destruction of the Death Star. But see, again, it's the same kind of thing here, right? So they're going to have a banking system and a financial system. So it's a little bit more macro, but we could also think of it as a microeconomic issue of how much. Look at that, he's got references, pictures.
How does he get all of these references?
Well, it's obviously a paper that doesn't have a lot of. Yeah, that's right. Because even before Solo came out, there was the idea that, right, that Chewbacca was a slave, and that's why he didn't like the. Yeah, so he's got, yeah, look at it though. He's got legit Bureau of Economic Analysis papers, Board of Governors, Federal Reserve System, CIA World Fact Book. Larry Eisenberg, he's a really great economist. That's a legit economist. George Lucas, Episode 4, New Hope film. I don't think he does this anymore. I mean, this is a pretty popular paper that. So the thing about the economics discipline is it's about 80% male. And, you know, like Star Wars appeals a little bit more to that group than others. Okay, I don't know what's going on here. Let's see here. No, avoided it. See, it's not in read mode. If not, I'll go old school. Okay, so here's the idea of the isoquants with the perfect substitute. So this would be, what if I can get the automated cashier to be just like a regular cashier? So here you can see that it doesn't matter which one I use from a production standpoint. Robots are just as productive as workers. Again, productivity, but they're equally productive. Here we're saying, if I use more workers, they get lazier. They talk more, they chat more, they think they can get away with it. Here, this would be, right, some combination of workers to capital. So these are our three differently shaped isoquants. Very similar, right, except exactly identical to what we had for the consumer, right? This is our two goods unrelated to each other, two goods that were substitutes, two products that were complements. That's exactly what we have going on here. So when we look at things, right, like, I mean, so there's oftentimes this discussion of things like farming. Because in farming, the idea is that the farmer has become so much more productive. How have they become productive? In part, not by necessarily increasing the amount of workers. In fact, we have fewer farmers, but the capital that's being used is a better kind of capital, right? It's got GPS, all these other things. And it turns out that, yeah, it's kind of, I mean, if anything, you don't necessarily have one farmer to one tractor, but you can think of different ways of combining these workers with the capital items to produce the output. And that the isoquant itself is changing. The way that it's changing is that farming is becoming less labor intensive and more capital intensive. And that's part of why Malthus was wrong, why it's requiring fewer farmers to grow actually more food, and why our food is actually cheaper. Because it turns out that tractors don't complain, right? But farmers do. Although they do, but no, well, that's true. Tractors don't complain. But workers do. Hey, that's gonna be the title of my paper. What would be my Star Wars themed? Right. I mean, well, think about the problem with the Ewoks, right? The Ewoks were primitive, right? They were too primitive, right? They had no capital items, right? They didn't know how to deal with those like mini, what were those walking things called that the Empire had? Yeah, I mean the walking machines. Yeah, they might have been AT-ATs. Yeah, I don't know. The 2 legs, right? Because it was 2 legs on the Forest Moon of Endor. It was 4 legs when they were on Hoth. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Yes. Okay. So I'm not going to talk about that anymore. But it's Endor is not a planet; it's a moon, and Hoth is a planet. What's really important for economists is not that. What's more important for economists than also, more so than when we were talking about indifference curves, what's important is the spacing of the isoquants. So that's the thing I'd like you to write above this slide if you're like writing out slides, or you could just write out slide 27. What this slide is highlighting that is now different from the consumer is that economists do care about the spacing of the isoquants from each other. That spacing is important because oftentimes the manager only knows what output goal they want, not the input goal. No reasonable entrepreneur says, I want to double my employment, right? An entrepreneur says, I want to double my output. The question that they face is, how do I double my output the cheapest way possible? And that's all going to depend on the spacing of the isoquants, which is what this slide is talking about. Target's a bigger store than it was 30 years ago, in part because they've automated more the distribution centers, they've automated more the checkout process, et cetera, right? The app is part of that, but there's other things as well. Amazon has gotten bigger because, dude, Amazon distribution centers are chock full of robots. So much so that Amazon bought a robot company to do exactly that kind of stuff, right? Amazon's not in the business of buying robot companies just for the heck of it. They're buying a robot company because they're trying to replace, even as cheap as they compensate the distribution workers, they still have to get paid minimum wage plus benefits. And robots can work and work and work and work. And if you wreck them, big deal, right? If you wreck a person, then you get stuck on TV. So the spacing matters, which means if they are equally spaced, meaning that to go from an isoquant of 100 to an isoquant of 200, that's obviously double the output. If they're equally spaced, then it would exactly double my inputs to double my outputs. That's what constant returns to scale is. Double the inputs, double the outputs. Maybe if I crawl, I'm not gonna crawl.
Try again.
Okay, let's see.
I think you have to work towards it.
Yeah, maybe. Oh, I got bored. Yeah, I got bored. Okay, so constant returns to scale is double the input, double the output. That's pretty unrealistic. Most of the time, it does not look like that. But it gives you a good way of a basis of comparison. Most of the time, it's decreasing returns to scale. Most of the time. Meaning that to double my outputs, I have to more than double my inputs. Or seen another way, if I double my inputs, I get less than double my outputs. Only in the very beginning stages of production do you get that really big hit. Like when this campus was first formed, 2012, and I got hired in 2015. So the year I got hired, the faculty size increased by like 15% to 20%. Crazy amount. And all of a sudden we went from teaching like 1,500 students to like 2,300 or 2,400, right? So I got a larger percentage increase in the output than in the input. That's what happens in the early stages of production. But again, there's such a thing as too big. So even for a large organization like Starbucks, they're clearly in this area, right? All the good stores, locations have been taken up, right? You don't need 6 or 7 in Al Moana, right? I mean, you really don't need that many, especially since White Kelly only gets 1, right? So, right, you really don't need it looking like that. Dude, how many nail shops do we need, right? I mean, nail shops, right? I mean, there's none of them, right? I mean,
Yeah, but no.
no, it's absolutely true. No, it's absolutely true.
I heard that there's a lot of Starbucks locations so that they could maintain like monopolies within areas of coffee.
Well, that's the competition. Gloria Jean? Like, only old grandmothers go to Gloria Jean's.
That's good.
Exactly. Neither of you are like of that age. Like, Gloria Jean's is like where my mother gets coffee. Like, it's probably like crochet. It's like old women. Old women. Nothing wrong with old women. I mean, they're nice people. But like they go to Gloria Jean's. I don't know where hipsters go. Probably not Starbucks. They have thrown their
Well,
own.
actually, I heard it now that Starbucks now those coffee they're competing with like those new mobile pieces.
Oh, like Taste Tea by Al Moana. Oh, I don't know.
They're like
My wife goes
they're
in.
kind of like substitutes.
Hmm? Yeah, well, that's right. That's right. Now I guess you'll do boba, I guess, huh? Or wait, you guys don't do boba, right? You do. Okay.
Variations of milk tea.
Okay.
I much prefer.
Well, most firms at some point do have the decreasing returns to scale. So the way that this is written is important because, again, it's written in a way that the manager, which again, most of you are not econ majors, but even if you are, you're going to have to dance with business at some point. Most of the time, they only know what the output goal is that they have to meet, that they have to satisfy. And then their question is how do I do it? If I want to get an 8% increase in sales, is it going to require 8% increase in labor and capital, more than 8% or less than 8%? How are they spaced with each other? And that's what this looks like here, right? So here, what you can see here is that basically I have, basically in this case, constant returns to scale. They are equally spaced from each other. Equally spaced. Here, you can obviously see that there's compression. That compression is referring here to increasing returns to scale, meaning that it required, or you could look at it this way. I double my inputs, double my inputs. So I'm going from 5 to 10, 2 to 4, right? And if we start to look at it here, what we're seeing is that the isoquants are getting closer and closer to each other, meaning that, right, we would have expected that if this had shown, 60 here, that if I could have doubled my inputs and gotten more than double my outputs, that would have referred then to increasing returns to scale, which is what you see initially here, but then eventually decreasing to scales, where they're getting closer and closer to each other. This is a very typical, B is a very typical way that firms look. Initially increasing returns to scale, and then decreasing returns to scale. Initially increasing returns to scale and then decreasing returns to scale. So that's our spacing. Okay, no one cares about carpet. I didn't even know there were brands of carpet, to be honest. See, and I don't even want carpet. I mean, carpet just seems like you. Oh, no, 85, wait, 258, 2300 Empire today. Yeah. Right, it's like that one, and it's that one, the one where the guys want us to buy annuities, right?
Yeah.
I have a structured settlement, but I need cash now. Call JG Wentworth, 877 cash now. Let's see. There's got to be, because I'm about to go to topic 5, but oh, which one? Which one?
Oh, I like the opera. Yeah, that one. No.
The opera one? I like the opera one. They're both pretty good.
Let's watch both.
They're only a minute.
I have a structured settlement and I need cash now.
See, right? How do you take a structured settlement and get cash?
It's your money. Use it when you need it.
Never do that. Don't ever do that. The commission on something like that will kill you. You might as well just take it as an annuity. But if you do need cash now. Oh, look, this is a perfect labor and capital replacement. Okay.
Go to the saxophone.
Which one?
Oh wait, don't do that one. Actually. No, wait, go to the JG one.
The,
Oh, wait, no,
the
go
bus opera?
Yeah. The bus opera.
Oh, see, look at that. So basically, they took the opera and they changed it to a bus. Oh, it's the same thing as, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing they made this one after the opera one. Okay, we get the idea.
Oh, and then also the
Yeah, I'm on it. Yeah, today. Okay, I'm not going to watch this for how the commercial changes over time. Okay, I'm not going to watch that. Whoa, look at that. Look at 20 the Tiger. Oh, he used to look intense. Okay, but I do have to get the topic.
Publicizing brands and have played a major role in marketing for many years. Watch channel number 1 to see how Mr. Clean has changed over the years. If this is your first time visiting the thing, don't forget to subscribe. And
Okay, let's see here. Just wait. Okay.
This mascot is one of the most popular and recognized because of his amazing vocals. He also has a signature catchphrase and friendly.
Someone had to make this video.
When Tony first graced Rose Michelle in the 1950s,
First
he was
grace.
similar but not identical to the tiger we left.
Okay, let's see how he used to look. Wait, hey! What? You're not gonna make me start this again, right?
Energizer 289 while making Street by Leo Burnett in 1951. Originally,
Look how bad he used to look.
He was a main selling and publicizing brand and have played a major
But the
role.
video keeps going back and forth.
Shiny, you have to walk over here again. That's like
Yeah, I think it's affecting the thing. I kind of want to see this one, the 10 saddest Happy Meal toys
Oh
ever.
my gosh, wait. Actually, there was a really sad Happy Meal toy. That was actually really sad.
When you were a kid, what was it?
The thing is, it was like a mask put on your face, and it was like a tiger's mask. But the sad thing is, it was broken in half. So I had
See.
that broken McDonald's.
No, well, I was going to say if it's the same one, Mr. Clean is sexually attracted to cleanliness. The only way you can ever skin that stain off the carpet. God, who has time to type things like that? Who has time to type these things? Oh, God. Oh, that's right, the Jolly Green Giant. Yeah, the Mr. Peanut, he's changed, right? Because he used to be well, again, I'm gonna click on images, could be offensive. Here we go. Look at that. See, right? He used to be richer. He had like a top hat, like really tall. What is going on with this computer? Yeah, seriously. Anyway, yeah, so he gets bigger than.
I like this. I feel like that. I like how he looks.
Hmm? Wait, when do you think? Wait, what's this? He's like a go-go dancer?
Trying to wear clothes. Oh my God, he was making all the.
Wait, what is he?
If you think about getting out of the shell, if you think
Yeah! Wow, this is someone's paper. Someone wrote the metamorphosis of Mr. Peanut.
wow, someone wrote how much.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, wow, there's a statue. Where is it? I know, but the computer's controlling me and I'm fighting it.
Atlantic City.
Is it really in Atlanta? Oh, Atlantic City. Why would Mr. Peanut want me to go to war? Come on. Oh, it was removed. I don't know. Really? Is that really what it says?
Have you seen that video of Mr. Peanut appears as a monster online?
Apparently, Mr. Peanut ran as a candidate in the Vancouver, British Columbia civic elections. Oh, wait. The artist dressed as Mr. Peanut.
Mr. Peanut is gay. Jim in the office.
Oh, Benson, right? That was Benson was in. Yeah, Benson was in the. Benson was the one with Mr. Beaker. Remember?
Oh yeah.
Mr. Beaker and Benson, I think. I don't know which one is which. Or Bunsen. Oh, Bunsen. That was his name because of Bunsen burner. Ah. I know, me too. Yeah, exactly, me too. I always thought it was Benson. Well, I guess maybe I need to. Okay, let's start topic 5 here. I need a structured settlement. Well, it can't be doing it to my computer. Is it? It's doing it to my computer too. There seriously is like something. It's hard to do my job when I have to fight the computer to do my job. Okay, wait. I'm gonna screw you over. Yeah, I mean it makes sense, right? It's my money. Take it when I need it. That's just okay. So with that understanding of where the production function that firms face, the other part of this is what we would have done in what you would have done in 130, which was the cost curves. Remember these bad boys? Yeah. Remember these? Total costs, fixed costs, variable costs. Yes, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. See, so this will be, this might make you reconsider it all again. So we're going to be doing things for the most part from an accounting perspective, not an economic perspective. With the primary difference between the two being, should the, from an economics perspective, it would be, should that firm be staying in the business that they're in, right? So the classic idea would be, or something like Lyft, for instance. So Lyft is having to think about, right, even if it's losing, so it's losing money, technically speaking, that's just losing money on cars, car drivers and cars, but they're also putting a ton of money into other things like bicycles and scooters and other things, right? And they're trying to figure out what is the thing that people are going to use. So obviously there's a bunch of resistance to dockless bicycles. There's a lot of resistance to scooters that could run you over. There's even resistance, obviously, to Lyft drivers and cars. But, right, the company as a whole, from an economics perspective, has to think about, is this the best way to use the capital that we do? Right? And so even Lyft has shifted from doing bicycles to then doing the scooters, right? Like the Lime scooters, and then sometimes shifting back in some communities forward towards it. We're not going to get into any of it. It's useful to talk about that, but for the most part, we're going to stick with an accounting perspective of this, which would mean we're going to look at the actual cost, not the opportunity cost in addition to it. So what that's going to mean for us is that, well, the first thing would be is that we don't need to consider sunk costs. Sunk costs are like, there are a few things that annoy me about this world, but the fact that people think about sunk costs is annoying to me. I am guilty of it too occasionally, but the idea of the sunk cost is, again, remember I went to Catholic school, so everything for me is Latin term for something at some level. It's a great Latin phrase, and it's useful to know in general. Alia acta est, which means like the die is cast. So there's like this famous like battle back in the times of the Romans where the crossing of the Rubicon River meant that now one party was going to be fighting with the other. Right? These two, the Romans were going to be fighting with someone else. Now, you can blame, right, like Caesar, you can blame the Roman leaders and say, dude, you really shouldn't have crossed the river and pissed off those others. But dude, once you did it, there's no going back. Like, you're stuck with it. That's exactly what sunk costs are saying, right? So I can buy a car and it be the wrong car to have bought, but I can't sit and like stew about the cost that I paid for it and right think about all the things that I should have done otherwise. I just have to think about what am I going to do going forward. That's what this slide is highlighting here. I just need to think about what should I do going forward. Some cost, it's obviously very easy to think about this or not to think about this. Exactly. Exactly. So what I mean, right? So yeah, right. It's staring at us. But should we be? And this is really hard because voters are obviously not going to believe this. Voters are not going to believe this. Everyone, for the most part, who's had class with Sakuda? Sakuda marketing over the business division. It's funny. He didn't sign on to be a faculty member here until the voters had approved back in 2012 the referendum to bail out the rail the first time. Because his belief was, dude, if the voters bail out the rail starts to get built, then everything's going to be all good. Which is probably generally true. That politicians, exactly as Kristen points out, yeah, once rail gets built, now that the rail isn't even finished, but it's been started, who's going to say now that it shouldn't be finished, right? I mean, we talk about it, right? Like we sometimes talk about, well, just make it the middle street, or then just say it quits. Right, but what did Caldwell want? Right, Caldwell said, "No, dude, once you started, you gotta go all the way." Now, again, I don't know what we would do with it. Maybe stunts. What else? What else do we do? I think for like it'd be like that thing at right at the mall, right? Like at the Pearl. I don't know what you would use it for. Anyway, well, let's see. Someone's got to have done some research on it. Let's see what they did. Let's see. I don't know. Probably like gardens or something stupid. Yeah, you might be true. It might be right. So audit, struggles, design. Alternative uses. We're not on the hook. Magnets. Anyway, I don't know what we'd use it for. Maybe we could drive buses on it. I don't know how wide it is, but I mean, it kind of sucks, right? I mean, in this case, because there's not a lot of alternative uses, and you know, I really don't know what the alternative uses are. So I mean, but here's the issue, right? Here as voters, if we were reasonable about it and thinking about it, and I'm not saying, I'm not passing judgment. I'm not sure. I probably should care more, and I really don't care. I'm not going to use the rail. I'm not going to stop people from using the rail, but I'm not going to get all up in arms about inefficient use of government resources, because there's a lot of better examples of inefficient use of resources and stupid things. Maybe I won't have to pay for parking at the airport, though. I'd use it to go to the airport. But the issue, right, is not the building of the rail. The bigger issue is going to be is that when it's finished in 2025, the fact that it's going to require a subsidy, which now, because in 2017, they combined with the bus system, that they're going to have to cut the 40, the C, and everything else to keep supporting the rail, because now it's all part of the same system. So bus, which is, yeah, I mean, the city's obviously subsidizing the bus as well, but buses are pretty cheap, and you can redeploy them to do different routes based on where people live. Well, if you live on the North Shore, I mean, rent's not going to be able, right? I mean, if you live on the North Shore, there's no bus. You're really getting screwed over by rail, because they're even going to cut. What bus takes you from the North Shore down to town, like to Al Moana or anything? What bus do you have to take? 52. So does the 52 go, what, kind of, oh, hey, does it take the H2, or what does it do? Or do you know? I mean, I don't even know. Right, well, exactly, right? But, I mean, the idea is, right, old people, right, I mean, you got your classic bus crew, right? And we're all fine with them taking the bus because they have to for economic necessity. I mean, some people don't like to drive, all the various reasons. And buses are nice because you can alter the route based on where people live. You can't do that with the train. So we're stuck with this east-west. All you can do is keep going north of Kapolei, right? Which kind of sucks because people who need the bus the most, Waianae, Miley, Nanakuli, you're going to have to still take the 40 down, right? The C or the 40 down to Kapolei, then to take the train the rest of the way.
So that means
because
well,
it's the same buses from the existing routes moving there.
I mean, so yeah, so I mean that's the thing, right? Now bus is the servant of rail, right? So now bus, everything's going to go to rail stations, and then rail will finish the job. Now again, that's a pretty profound thing that we all as voters voted on in 2017. I doubt we all knew what we were voting for. But going back to some cost, right? I mean, we should be seriously rethinking. Oh, I mean, this is just page 3 of a lot of really bad, depressing articles about the rail system. And the alternative would be what they decided in California, right? Which the California thing was they were going to have high-speed rail from San Francisco to LA. They canceled the project, but they had spent money planning it for like years and years and years. And now Trump's all grumpy about the fact that we wasted all this money planning something that didn't actually get built. But, dude, Trump, the econ major from Wharton, alia acta est, the die is cast. Like, it is what it is. And, dude, no one wants to take the train from San Francisco to LA. Like, if you got to make that trip, you're probably a business person, and you're probably going to fly. You're not going to take the dumpy train for 3 hours and sit next to someone else. You're going to sit on a plane, right, and get liquored up and then land an hour later. At least that's what I would do. Okay, so here are classic 3 categories then that you remember from principles, which would be, we have obviously our total costs, which are broken down into variable costs and fixed costs. The fact that fixed costs exist is what makes this a short run discussion. So fixed costs exist only in the short run. When we're talking long run, everything is variable. So what that means is that the firm, in making its output decisions and in thinking about its costs, has to think about what changes as I produce more things and fewer things, and what doesn't. So I had this person I went to grad school with, Omar Dahi. I had to borrow his car once for summer, and I lived in his apartment while he went away for the summer. And I remember I borrowed his Walkman back in the day, before like MP3 players and even CD players, like you borrowed someone's Walkman. But a cassette tape was stuck in it. And it wasn't so bad, but it was a mixtape from his girlfriend to him. So like, I don't know, it just felt kind of creepy listening to that mixtape, but it was the only music I had for the whole summer. Anyway, the whole reason why I'm bringing up Omar Dahi isn't just to illustrate the fact that I remember names for far too long. It's the idea that he graduated 1 year before me with his PhD, but he started teaching at Hampshire College. So Hampshire College is this like really weird college. The reason why it's so odd is because, dude, there are no grades at Hampshire College. There are no majors at Hampshire College. There's no grades, no majors. You basically have an advisor. Your advisor says, what are you interested in learning more about? And you'd say, like, I want to learn more about the coffee industry. It'd be like, okay, what class do you think it's going to require for you to learn more about the coffee industry? It might be an econ class or two, it might be a marketing class or two, it might be a sustainable ag class or two, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you keep going through the classes that you pick that lead you to answering the questions that you want. And each time you complete a class, you're not given an A, B, C, D, or F, but A, B, C, D, or F, but I'd be like, I think I've really learned a lot this semester about how to integrate content ethics with a discussion of whether people should steal from others. Right, and so I'd have to write this whole narrative. And I remember seeing Omar like 3 years after we graduated. He's like, oh, dude, I hate the end of the semester because he has to write these like 500, 1,000 word narratives about each person in the class. Right? I mean, that's like crazy insane. Like, that would take a ton of time. But, right, the college is basically shutting down now because not enough students are taking it, are doing that kind of curriculum. And at the same time, they have all these fixed costs that are immutable to how many students are actually attending. So I think like 1,300 students attended the school. Yeah, no majors, no grades, no tests, different by design. And they have 800 acres. Right next to it, basically right next to it, is UMass Amherst, University of Massachusetts Amherst, which has 1,400 acres. So it's slightly less than double the size. And it teaches something like 13,000 students in about the same physical space. Right now, obviously, they have more professors, they have more staff, but at the same time, the fixed costs are not exactly the same, but they're not that different either. Yet one has much more scale. So exactly these kinds of stories like this are exactly right, like this one, or I'm sure I don't have to scroll too far here. This one's saying it's not effective. This one it's saying, anyway, it's not going to do very much here, but basically it's not effective. It's not useful. So what was the comparison here? Here it was. So this is the article I read this morning. Because I was trying to think, oh my God, what's Omar going to do? Am I going to have to try to find a job for him? Because, you know, he's a nice guy. I should try to find something for him. But yeah, here was 23,000 students on 1,450 acres. Hampshire has 1,175 students on 800 acres. So the idea was, right, fixed costs are basically the same for both schools. The other school is really, really small. It's probably going to have to go out of business. Probably. So that would bring us to shutting down fixed or variable. So let's take a break here at 6:33. Let's take a break to 40 after, and then I'll pick it up from here at 6:40. Go off for a little bit. I wonder what it is. It's not a sunset. Maybe it's like that one. Maybe. Okay. There was something. No, who's gonna win, computer or Shiny? My bet's on the computer too. Yeah, my bet's on the computer.
I found our representative.
Flawed in some way? Was it lacking a straw?
Oh no, I just wanted to get water from the water fountain.
No, but why'd you have to open it so
So they
oddly?
can put water in
Really?
it. Yeah.
I was too cheap to get a cup.
I could have given you a cup. I have like a pile of Solo cups in my office. See, I have problems with. No, we should have coordinated with each other. Okay. Oh well. This is like a. Oh wait. What size shirt do you wear?
Medium.
You get the honorary shirt today. Oh my God. Don't read, just swim. From the Mountjoy Division II champions from the summer of 2005, Mountjoy, Pennsylvania, which I used to live nearby. All yours. I don't know if I wore it. I might have worn it once or twice, but it's definitely been washed. Yeah. So yeah, this is the third shirt in the pile. I have other shirts that I've got. Again, I'm not eyeballing you all for shirt sizes, but I'm trying to get a general sense of things. You just missed the award of a shirt. What size shirt are you again? Okay. So shutting down. Shutting down is a really hard decision to make. And shutting down basically means that essentially that the firm would not only lose money by producing stuff, but has no viable plan in which to get the money back and come out of the court, right? Because you can temporarily ride out a downturn in sales through capital, right? And you don't want to shut down the brand just because of 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 bad quarters. But the idea is that you don't shut down because you want to keep the business going. The cost of shutting down would be too expensive. So you make it that 1 or 2 years to reorganize the firm and avoid shutting down. Shutting down obviously reduces all of your costs to 0. But unfortunately, it costs a lot then to restart up operations again. So shutting down, for the most part, means that your costs go to 0, with the exception of quite possibly your fixed costs. so we're talking about this Hampshire College thing. So Hampshire College, again, 1,100 some students. What they're doing now is they're laying off employees. So the idea was that they're not taking in a freshman class. They're going to allow only 77 students to come in, ones that already said they were going to come in, so they can't get rid of them if they wanted to. So 77 students are going to come in. So they did 9 layoffs today. And does anyone want to guess what area of the college they got rid of first?
Business.
No. So think about what, huh? Nope. So think of like the entire university, all of its operations, all the way from like parking security guards to advancement, that's where they raise money, library, admissions, faculty members. Who did they get rid of first?
Food. Staff.
Yeah, and which staff members did they get rid of first? Who do I not need if I'm not bringing in new classes? Admissions, yeah. So admissions was the first thing they cut, right? So it makes sense, right? Because now I've got a set of students that's going to keep getting smaller and smaller for the next 4 years. I don't need admissions. We would think that the next thing they'll start to cut is they'll start to get rid of some faculty members, because now they'll be like, dude, we don't really need this certain professor anymore because no one's going to be taking that guy's class. People are going to start leaving. And eventually, at some point, what they're probably hoping is that some other school will buy them out. So if any of you have ever been on the East Coast of the United States is littered with schools. Like, there are schools like 10, 20, 30 miles apart from each other, equally big schools. So Hampshire College is located in Massachusetts. I know it seems odd that it's located, but it's located in Massachusetts. In Massachusetts, a school shut down last year called Mount Ida College, which was in a suburb of Boston. And UMass bought them out, and they wanted their dorms because they wanted to put have interns do stuff in Boston, and they would live in these dorms at Mount Ida College, and Mount Ida College shut down. The problem that UMass is having right now is they don't have enough dorms. So they would go, right, they would buy out Hampshire College, use their dorms, and students would just take the bus to go from Hampshire College to UMass. All of these things are things that are basically, right, what's being negotiated right now is Hampshire College trying to figure out some way to get their fixed costs covered by someone else, in this case Hampshire College, and then doing what they can to cut their variable costs because they're going to have fewer and fewer students. So fixed costs are not the same as sunk costs. This is the most classic error that non-economists make. And again, it's the idea, again, of like the rail, right? The rail has already been built. It is not a fixed, yes, it is a fixed cost, but at the same time, if the infrastructure, right, it's already been built, it's already been paid for. No one is pouring concrete unless they've got a contractor that's been paid. There's no rail that's been constructed that is unpaid for, right, at this point. They're only building the rail as much as they've got the money to do it, right? Because no contractor is going to take on a job where there's no prospect of getting paid. So what are we, right? I mean, what's the cost of having a rail exist that no one is riding? There is no cost, right? There is no fixed cost to that. The fixed costs start once we buy a choo-choo train, right, to go on it. And once we've got a choo-choo train, whether the thing is going or not, that's a fixed cost, right? Whether 1 passenger rides or 1,000 rides. Now that's, right, that's where then this starts to get really, really scary. Because how many people, I mean, this is the thing, right? How many people are going to draw, I'm not trying to disrail, I'm just using it as an example because it's a pretty good example. How many people do we think are going to drive to one of the 2 terminal spots, right? Ala Moana or Kapolei, and take the rail to another place, right? Maybe not that many. I mean, I don't know, but I don't know if it's going to be that many. I'm probably not going to take it. Oh, they were talking about it one time, it was going all the way to Manoa. I probably wouldn't take it from Manoa where I live. I wouldn't take it from there to here, even though it'd be more convenient. I don't want to have to make conversation with you for an hour, right? I mean, I want to just sit in my car and bitch and moan about the world to myself, right? I mean, that's what I want to do. When I drive to work, I want to listen to the radio. You know, I mean, that's me, right? And
what is your car? Where do you find change?
The faculty lot. So the faculty lot is where you see the nicest cars here, and mine's the shittiest car island in that sea of very nice cars. So you know how like when you go into the parking lot, you can go left or right? Go left, and that's the faculty side. Right is the student side. Go left. Find the car that is, when I bought it, the car in 2001 when it was constructed was a white car. And the guy, when he bought it new, decided to make it his own shade of blue. And he told me, when I bought it in the Campbell Industrial Park, he told me that it was the only car of that color I would ever find on the islands. And you know what? That guy lied to me, because I've seen at least one other car, and I don't know what the blue is, but it's not like blue. It's not even like Robinade blue. It's like a, I don't even know how to describe it.
Is it kind of dark-ish?
No, it's like, it's weird. It's dark in some places, light in others. You open up any door or trunk, and it's obviously white still from the original color. Yeah, so, yeah, that's what happens.
Are you gonna get a new car?
No, you know how bad traffic was today, for instance? I was driving today, and I don't know, like the guy, it was like bumper to bumper traffic, and the guy behind me, like, tapped my bumper. I like got out, like we were right by the shoulder. I got out, looked at it, and like, like it was an extra scratch. And I don't care. Like the guy looked like a nice old man. Like, I don't want to make his day shitty. He's like, oh, you should give me your insurance. I'm like, listen, you don't need, you're gonna fit, like, I don't care. Like, right? I mean, good karma, right? No, but see, I can't do that, because then if I had a nice car, it'd be like, pay up, old man, right? I mean, I don't have to be like that kind of guy. Like, I can park right next to cars and not even care if my car next to them. It's always an adventure. Is the car going to start? I mean, I love excitement like that. Like, is the car going to start? And it's not always going to. I mean, that is the excitement.
You have a Corolla, right?
Yeah. I always carry jumper cables with me, right? So if it doesn't start, I
You should go to
can.
Costco and get the one that's like do it yourself.
What?
It's like a battery. It's like a portable battery charger and it comes with 2 jumper cables. I have one.
Oh, I
And it
have
works
one too.
wonders. My dad
I
has
don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Who to go
It's
to?
$60.
My car doesn't start.
Well, I don't have it right now.
Where to go? My car started.
I have that too, though. Like, it's
It's really good to invest. It's like $60 at Costco.
Yeah, but you know what? I can call security and they'll do it for free.
Oh,
Jeez.
somebody does it?
Yeah.
Really?
Oh, shit.
See? When you have a shitty car, you know all the paths and avenues to cover it all. Yeah, so we'll figure. But I mean, right, even with my car, right? Even with my car, again, how do I think about that? Like, what if I bought the car and it was like really bad? Like, right? I mean, it's possible to buy a used car. Obviously, it's more likely to buy a used car that was over-promised and under-delivers, right? But again, how should I look at that transaction? Not necessarily a fixed cost. The fixed cost is having a car that I insure and register and don't drive. But at the same time, it's a sunk cost. I made the decision some time ago, and I need to look at it rationally and think about, do I get rid of it or not, right? And if it's underperforming, then you need to get rid of it. Stop insuring it, stop registering it, and not use it anymore. And firms have to do this as well in terms of the buildings they have, the programs they have. So think about programs, even like mine, economics. And this is nothing against my economics program. I like my economics program, I really do. But how many students do we have? Take a guess. How many econ students are on this campus?
25.
Like 10, I think, maybe 12 students. Dude, someone somewhere on this campus should be having a conversation about should this program exist. I certainly have raised the issue. It's bad if I have to raise the issue. But right, I mean, because the other side of it would be, okay, well, what's the problem? Why does it have only 12? And why do we have an economics program? We've had an economics program since 1976, since the school formed. We shouldn't just have a program, though, because we have to have an economics program. We don't have to have an economics program. Couldn't we use me, the same Shining, and create, I don't know, like, I wouldn't be this way, but like, right, you could be like, let's say I was like a hardcore communist, right? Then I could be like communist economics, right? It's the only place on Hawaii, right? So you can imagine that you could design the program so that students would want, right? Or you could say like managerial economics concentration, right? And so maybe I could get more students that way. Unfortunately, I just think that my bosses don't want to think about that because they can't get out of the fact that they've always had to hire economists, and they're not realizing that it's a sunk cost. They should be able to rethink it. I'm not going to take it hard. I'm a big boy. I'll figure out what to do. Right? But it's like, why does every school have to have an art program or a library? Right? I think all the things that we think of as sacred on a college campus, we don't have dorms. We probably should, right? All things like that. Yeah, right, yeah.
So I've noticed during my economics program, when we study, the graphs, I've noticed that kind of if I was to transfer into data science, I see value in that.
Yeah, exactly.
So I thought maybe, is there a program where, because I know that I read that data science or being a data scientist is
it absolutely it exactly is. And it exactly is. And my most successful graduates have not been necessarily economists. They even in some cases, right? So again, Pete, the one I was telling you about, the one that works at Subaru, he data scientist, right? Went to Johns Hopkins for his master's degree in econ. Wasn't a data scientist treated that way, but the same skill set, right? So if you've ever gone in the D building, and on the second floor at the end, there's that like newish kind of room which is like data hub or something like that, painted on the door. It's like a really expensive room on this campus. But like I'm one of the people that uses it a lot, and I do just data stuff in it. Yeah, I mean, think about it. How many data science concentrations could I probably do? I could probably get more than 10, right? Unfortunately, I don't know who doesn't want that conversation. Maybe it's the administrators who just think like, who would I piss off if I got rid of econ? What students would I piss off? What union would I piss off? But at the same time, right, what this highlights is that some costs, I mean, and I don't know how many life lessons you're ever going to get in this class, but dude, some costs are going to kill you if you don't think about it, right? Think about this, right? Bad relationships, right? How many bad relationships have we all been in where you're like, oh, dude, I've invested so much in her already. Like, I really don't want to break up with her. Yeah, I think it's just turning the corner. Dude, sunk cost. I should get a t-shirt that says that. Dude, sunk cost. Okay, what do I want to focus on here? Okay, you remember this chart? Yeah. You remember this chart here? I'm not going to require you to do it the same way you have to do it in principles. And remember, things would be take home, so you wouldn't even have to worry about it this way. But let me briefly explain these columns again. The idea is that column 1 and 2 add up to column 3. Fixed cost plus variable cost equals total cost. The fixed costs are constant across. But that's what's happening is that the variable costs are increasing at an increasing rate. How do I see that? In marginal cost. Because, right, the change in the cost here is 0, right? No matter what my level of output is, there is no change. This is obviously changing. It's increasing, makes sense. If I want to make more stuff, it should cost more to make it. But the change in those costs initially is decreasing and then increasing. Does anyone remember from principles why that's the case? Why is column 4, marginal cost, initially a bigger number that's getting smaller, and then that smaller number is becoming bigger? Why is marginal cost shaped like a J, basically? Why is marginal cost, column 4, shaped like a J? Why is marginal cost, column 4, shaped like a J?
Is it measuring the productivity of the variable cost?
Exactly. And it's what? Is it identical or mirror image? Would you agree with that, Conrad, or
I don't know.
it's exactly, but you're exactly right. You're exactly right. It's reflecting the production side of it, and it's basically the opposite side of the production. So it's basically a mirror image of it. The reason why the marginal costs are going down here is because it's not requiring that many additional workers at the initial stages. But then what happens is that my workers get less and less productive, but they're still demanding $15 an hour. So my costs are going up, but they're not as productive as they used to be. So my marginal cost is inverse to or mirror image of my marginal production, my marginal productivity. So whereas my marginal cost looks like that, the marginal productivity looks like that. Increasing at an increasing rate, right? Decreasing rate. Increasing rate, decreasing rate. Mirror images of each other. The averages, columns 5, 6, 7, just divide by the total quantity. But column 4 is the most significant one in this. Column 4 is the most significant here. And the idea that the cost should be inverse to the productivity. The cost should be inverse to the productivity. And then essentially, as I've said before, there is such a thing as being too big, and there is such a thing as being too small. Both sides of it here, right? Which is kind of my argument again for econ. Econ, if anything, is too small. Now, I could be an idealist about it and be like, dude, you should all be econ majors, right? Like, it makes me sad that you're not. Good students should be econ majors. I don't want to fight that fight because I don't think it's the right fight to fight. But I mean, the other side of it would be is, dude, let's take the resources we have, reallocate it to something where people want it, right? So, so data science, right? Financial econ, a bunch of different things you could do to use the same resources to produce a different output. And in some sense, to get to this idea that, again, you get to a point where, yeah, it's really expensive here. Like, if you look at this, it's as expensive to have a very small program as way too big of a program that's being inefficient. It's not necessarily that we're cheaper than Manoa, but because of our small size, I mean, I still have to exist, right? And I'm a pretty expensive thing to exist in this classroom. Okay, so the driver here of all this, of these costs, again, are the marginal costs. And for the most part, the biggest driver of those costs are my labor, So my marginal cost here would be for workers, the way in which it changes is not number of workers. Well, it is number of workers, but the way that they're compensated is their wage, little w. Yeah, if you took intermediate macro, this is the same thing here. So my marginal cost here then would be how much do I have to pay for a worker, wage, over how productive they are. So my wage over how much stuff they make. Basically, how can I separate out how much I get compensated across each student? So the only reason why I can continue to exist with only 12 majors is because, dude, I got 130 and 131, right? Where I'm teaching like 40 students at a time, right? That's how I get big numbers, right? To blow marketing out of the woodwork, right? Because marketing has more students as a major, as a concentration, but each of their classes are smaller. That's the reason why this situation exists, because you can take a look at Scheiding's total wage, look at the number of students I have, and my marginal costs are pretty low. My counter to that is, why do business students have to take 130 and 131? Couldn't we take a class called managerial economics for business majors, make it a 3-credit, 100 level class, and I just saved you 3 credits. There's no requirement that you should have to take 6 credits of econ. Now, I'm shooting myself in the foot by saying that, but I mean, but it's absolutely true. If you are demanding good outcomes from your, not, I mean, some people would say, dude, you're paying really nothing to go here, but you're still paying something to go here. And if you're being a business major and you're required to take 2 econ classes, even though econ's not your major, I'd like to think you got something from the class, but I could make it 3 credits. I mean, I could do it in a 3, because, I mean, right here's the thing. How much do you need as a non-econ major to know about fiscal policy and monetary policy? Do you need 2 weeks, which is what we do in 131, or could you live with it in a lecture or 2, right? I mean, it's not going to change, so it's what it is. But this then becomes the important way of then understanding, going back to, it's the inverse of the productivity, is how that marginal cost curve is shaped, which you can make sense here because it is the denominator here. So the marginal cost is moving inverse to opposite of the marginal productivity. When the workers are less productive, my marginal costs are rising. When my workers are very productive, then my marginal costs are falling. So one is rising, one is falling. I'll pause here for a second. I'm like really shortchanging my job.
It's okay.
It's okay. What would I do instead? Yeah, it's okay. No, like the whole debate. Oh, dude, you know how I wasted my Friday? Do you know how like the classes you have to take that have ETH designation, ethics designation? Yeah. So I'm on that subcommittee. Oh my God, talk about.
I'm in one of those right now.
So it's really hard. Okay, so it's hard because some professors really love to teach you, right? Like philosophy professors, that's what they do, right? Of course they love doing it. But like other professors, they just want to have like a class that has only 20 or 30 students, right? Which is what those like special classes get. So there's a whole bunch of different motivations, which means that professors do it for different reasons. So now the school wants to crack down and say like, no, if you're going to do it, you have to really do a lot of ethics in it. And now the professors are really grumpy about it because they're like, you can't just impose that. We have to pass. And anyway, that's the middle of the debate right now. Yeah, who's teaching yours?
I'll be talking about ethics.
He probably really cares about it, doesn't
Yeah, he does.
he? Like lives that kind of stuff. Yeah, he's a good person. He's a good person. He's a good person. He's probably got a lot of good karma surrounding him. But at the same time, he's probably doing it for the like philosophical reasons of good ethics, right?
Most of why we should or shouldn't eat them, not because of.
Yeah, like don't eat animals and.
Because they have feelings, right? Not rather the way we're doing it.
Let's see, where do you draw the line, right? Like.
Oh yeah, that's what our final papers is on.
Really?
Yeah.
Where do you draw the line? So where are you drawing the line?
So I mean, I guess as we were presented with like 3 different philosophies, and one side of the spectrum is, they don't have any rationale.
Sure.
They're just animals. So
what if they're roadkill? What if they're already dead?
So there's like a couple things that would like, if it's an absolute necessity.
Okay, yeah,
right,
yeah.
It's like one far end of the spectrum.
Okay.
But then like on this spectrum, they don't have any rationality, so like you can just kill them if you want to, but we shouldn't just because that's a reflection of us as human beings. The middle one is kind of like they suffer, so
Yeah.
cause the least amount of suffering, and the other one, the farther end, is just like no, we shouldn't do anything to them.
And so do you do training in each of these 3 different philosophies? You do like, he like teaches you about each of the 3 philosophies?
A little bit. We kind of just
So see, but this is the thing. So his class will count, but someone else who just like if I were teaching ethics and I said, dude, just be a good person, good karma, and just left it at that, my ethics course now, I don't have an ethics course, but if that was my ethics course, it would not pass. And it probably shouldn't because you didn't learn any ethics from me. Like, don't be a dick, right? I mean, that's the biggest philosophy I could teach any of you. Like, just don't be mean. Don't be a dick about things. Yeah, don't. It's true that old bumper sticker that says "mean people suck" really is true. Like, and I hate to simplify my ethics into that, but it's absolutely true. I go into this world, I live in this world, thinking everyone's going to screw me over somehow, and sometimes I'm pleasantly surprised when they don't, and I got what I expected when they do. So, yeah, what's the line, right? Like, I do look both ways when I cross the one-way street because people do suck. It's true. I mean,
you have to go get your license renewed or whatever. Like if you have to take the driving test.
Yeah.
Ask the person administering your test about all the different things that they've had to deal with.
Oh, I'm sure.
They're amazing.
You see, and I don't even debate, like, the one I do, and some of you have seen this before. This one I got wrong on the Hawaii driver's test. How would you know the difference between a pedestrian crossing and a school crossing?
Let's see.
Well, apparently they're different. This one is just a pedestrian. This one, they're going to school. Does it really make a difference? I mean, I'm not going to go barreling through an intersection because it's just pedestrians or because it's school. But I got that wrong on the Hawaii the written test for Hawaii. It delayed me by getting my license by 7 days that I had to Now, some of you may say, dude, shutting, it did the trick because you do actually now remember the difference between the two. But I was licensed to drive for 20 years before I had to do this.
But I know that school zone one by a park. There's no school
I
there.
think it's meant to be
Yeah.
kids.
I mean,
Kids?
The implication's the same with both.
exactly. The implications are the same. Again, I'm not going to go barreling through it just because it's pedestrians and not school kids or vice versa.
Don't hit anyone with your cars.
So exactly. So this one they're carrying, I guess, like a backpack, and this guy's being a little handsy. And the other one is just walking along. Yeah. Anyway, but I got that one wrong. The other one was, what's the maximum weight you can drive on a Hawaii road without having to get a special license?
Wait, what? That's a thing?
It was a question I had on my written test. I got it wrong because I didn't know. How would you know? It was like choices of like 6,000 pounds, 7,800 pounds, 10,000 pounds. I mean, drive a Corolla, it weighs 2,000 and some pounds. Like, I don't know what the. It turns out that it was like 7,800 pounds or something like that. I don't drive a vehicle like that. Other ones are like common sense, where then you could say it's the same as like, what's the blood? I mean, but that one's more relevant, right? Like blood alcohol before you can't. Like that one I knew, but like it was like 0.8. I think it was 0.8. I think. Or no, 0.08. Sorry, no, sorry, 0.08, not 0.8. Right. 0.08. I think it was 0.08. I think that's what I put. I think. 0.8. Yeah, that would be Sleeping Beauty drunk at that point. Not like 0.8 would be. Yeah, you're right. I think that's what it is.
It's like a clear spring night.
Yeah, that's like I think it's 0.08.
I get drunk for an entire week.
I mean, that's still pretty amazing. That is it? No, I think that's for like people who aren't even supposed to be drinking.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah, 0.08. I think it's pretty amazing that you can be 0.02 and not even be allowed to drink and be 0.02. That's pretty amazing, right? I mean, what does that mean? You just been.
Shouldn't there be zero?
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
Sir, have you been drinking? No.
What is commercial?
like I think like driving like a pickup or like a truck with.
So like you're on the job and you drink.
Okay, so let's see here. What will one do for me? Oh wait, I gotta say, over how many hours? Let's say half an hour, and let's say I'm 140 pounds. Well, I couldn't even do that then. Okay, so let's say 1 hour. Couldn't even do that. Okay. So let's say if I drink a beer over 1.5 hours. Oh, sorry. Let's say I drink a beer. Oh, wait. Over how many hours? Let's say 2 hours. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So,
Because you're 140 pounds now.
okay, so then let's say, oh, let's ramp this up and bring this down.
Oh shit, yeah, you're so crazy.
Okay, so let's see.
You're so good.
So you could be 180 pounds and drink a beer an hour and be under 21 and be okay to drive. That's pretty amazing, at least in Hawaii.
Yes.
Wait,
Yep.
120.
I know what you know.
Whoa, a shot.
That's what we're seeing here. Is it really?
It's a
Yeah.
hard
But yeah,
liquor, though.
same thing. Oh, you might as well have fun with a shot then.
Exactly.
Yeah. Shots,
How about-
wine, and beer are all the same.
So let's see, what would this be then?
Oh,
10 shots, okay. How many will let me get up to? Oh, so now we're shiting drunk at that point. 0.8.
Shots.
40 shots in an hour. You're over 0.5.
oh, if you
under an
drink
hour.
20 shots in an hour.
Okay, but see, this is the class I'm gonna have to teach. If I can't teach econ, I'm gonna have to teach safe drive. What do you want?
What was it?
What?
1.5 fluid ounces.
Yeah, 1.5 ounces. So
Okay, wait.
that's like 30 ounces of vodka over an hour.
Jesus.
20,
So 30 ounces. That's almost a quart. It's almost a quart or almost a liter of vodka in an hour. Okay, so what about this? What if I drink a case of beer? Okay, a case of beer in an hour would be bad. What about over 2 hours? Still,
24 beers. Holy shit.
well, a case of beer over 3 hours, still bad.
So
Five.
you would have to drink pretty much a standard bottle of any hard alcohol in that much.
Whoa.
Oh, it's
About
still-
25 and a half
21.
ounces.
I know they calculated outside.
How can all of these
I
be?
know, I just know how, I know, when I know exactly how much I can
You're
drink.
still shit faced.
Oh.
So dry. And not get buzzed.
So, okay, so that seems like 12, like a 12 pack over 10 hours.
Because that's still really close to 1 an hour.
That's true. Yeah, you're right. You're right. You're right. Yeah, you're right.
About 5 an hour is what you're like.
Yeah. Okay, so you remember these charts here. Now we get back to actually something relevant here. Sorry, yeah. If you remember this, but these are useful life skills that you now know that you can be under 21 and be kind of shit-faced. I mean, for an 18-year-old, a beer, right? I mean, don't you remember back in those days, right? Like wine coolers are like all the age, right? You could probably drink a wine cooler an hour and be okay to go. So there's our J-shaped marginal cost curve. You will notice that variable cost is equidistant to total cost. These are equidistant because the difference between the two would be the fixed cost. The average fixed cost, this difference is getting smaller and smaller because the average fixed cost, as you get bigger and bigger, your fixed costs are spread out over more and more people. Which again, UMass Amherst, 23,000 undergraduates, the fixed costs are spread over a very large number of students. Whereas at Hampshire College, 13 years, right? So the fixed cost, they obviously have to get rid of dorms, they have to get rid of faculty and staff members, because an admissions person, right, whether they see 100 prospective students or 0, they still are going to get a wage, right? You're not paying them one commission. Right, the host at the factory, right? Sky gets a fixed pay amount, whether there's a lot of people or not. Yeah, so what does that mean? Well, that's fine. We can constitute Sky's cost if, right, if we have a lot of people going in, our compensation cost ratios. But we have a fixed difference between those two. And you've seen these curves before. Nothing too different here. But what's important to remember here is that these are flows, meaning that they are occurring over time. And again, that's what people forget, is that fixed costs, again, are not the same as sunk costs. Fixed costs are something that I incur over time. And I can stop those fixed costs if I shut down. Shutting down is an option. So as much as we may love rail or hate rail, right? I mean, really the reasonable way, economics grounded way of approaching it would be that the rail, as far as it exists right now, which is about the airport, is a sunk cost, not a fixed cost. And we really could still actively debate whether we want to finish it or not. It might look like an eyesore, and it might remind us of our stupidity to have built it as far as we did. But that should be independent of, right? Keeping to build it just because you've already started it seems really dumb. And it's dumb because, dude, the die has been cast. It's treating total cost not as a flow, right? It's saying, dude, we built the rail this far, now you got to finish it. That's a horrible campaign slogan. We started it, so now we got to finish it. That's a sunk cost, not a fixed cost. I'm not running for mayor, so wait, can Caldwell run again? He can keep running for mayor. There's no like limits on.
I don't think so.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, again, I'm obviously not a fan of Caldwell, but I'm really not a fan of bad economics. That's the biggest thing what are my pet peeves? I don't like mean people, and I don't like people who confuse sunk costs for fixed costs. And Caldwell at least fulfills the second one of these. I don't know what to say first. Dude, it's a sunk cost, it's not a fixed cost. So we could stop it. Now, in any reasonable business, it's the exact same thing, right? Think of bad products that are produced. A good company will be reflective and responsive and stop making the thing that no one is buying, right? They're not just going to say, screw it, I know best, and consumers will have to suck it up, and right, that's the way it's got to be. No, they'll go out of business if they don't do that. And so yes, there are costs to then creating and getting rid of a failed product line, but isn't that the joy of like running a business, right? Figuring out what people want and sometimes getting it wrong and sometimes getting it right. I don't know. I mean, again, there's this whole thing about UH wants to do 5-week classes. I don't want to teach them, but hey, but I mean, right? But I mean, here's the thing. I'm not if there's enough faculty members that want to teach it and they're not going to bother me about it, go to town. Like, I don't think that people should be learning that way. I don't think people should be teaching that way. But, dude, if you have to take finance, I think Ruin only teaches it in that 6-week time period. If you have to take a psych from Langford, I think Langford only teaches it in like 5-week, 6-week time periods.
If you need the degree.
Exactly. If you need the degree and you don't care about the class. Now, again, I disagree that that should be the point of view, having to pay $900 or something, but.
That's the ethics behind
yeah,
class.
Exactly. But, right, you've got a faculty member that gets to decide how they teach the class, how long they teach the class, which is probably too much freedom because our incentives are not aligned. If you're a good faculty member, they are aligned. I'm aligned. I want you to learn something, so I'm not going to get. I'm not trying to play the good guy, bad cop, good cop, bad cop thing here, but you can certainly see when a class is not aligned with what your objectives are. Okay, enough of my soapbox. What do I want to do here? Okay, what I'm going to do here is I am going to cover this appendix, but I'm not going to cover these Lagrange. I'm not going to do this. Don't worry, don't worry, don't worry. Don't get all up in arms about things. But I do want to cover some of the basics of this without doing the math of this. So we're not going to do Lagrangians. Don't worry. I'm not forcing you to do it. But if you like math, you'll like these parts to it. but I do want to do some simple algebra where we can do almost the same stuff, be a little bit more approximate than precise, but you'll get the same kind of understanding. And that way, I don't have to flood you with math and spend all this time teaching you the math, but I can spend all the time teaching you the logic of it, which is probably more important for your life than learning the math of it. So why don't I finish up the slides on this next week, and we'll do the math of it next week, so that the week after that, we'll do the final problem set in class, and at that point, you'll then get the exam that will then be due 2 weeks later, with the option of it being turned in at the end of spring break if you want to. Okay, that's it for me. Go drink a beer over an hour. Yeah, take a shot over an hour. Yeah, I mean, again, but again, I mean, I think that the Hawaii test, I think it's random what questions you get. So,
Well, now we know at
So
least
just
two.
go to the back, well, at least for me, I went to the back of the book and memorized all the answers.
see, and that was the problem. So my